alongside the Prime Minister's intervention on Thursday. Elsewhere, Reform UK's deputy leader says it was right and proper to investigate bullying allegations in Rupert Lowe's offices. Richard Tice insists the party had to act after Mr Lowe was suspended and reported to police over claims he threatened violence against the chairman. Reform also says it has evidence of serious bullying and derogatory remarks about women, allegations Mr Lowe denies. Nigel Farage warns the party must avoid constant infighting, saying it has a duty of care to its staff. In other news, ministers are facing pressure over reports that an alleged Palestinian gunman entered the UK illegally on a small boat. The Mail on Sunday claims Abu Wadi, a former militant, has called for the killing of Jews and posed in pictures with AK-47s. He's believed to have been among 235 migrants picked up in the Channel on Thursday. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp says the government must find and remove him immediately. Now, a 32-year-old man has been charged with the murder of 16-year-old Nathaniel Burrell, who was shot dead in Stockwell in South London on Tuesday. Omar Prempeh was arrested and charged on Saturday and will appear in court tomorrow. Nathaniel was found with gunshot wounds on Paradise Road but died at the scene despite paramedics' efforts. Police are reviewing CCTV and urging witnesses to come forward as they keep an open mind about the motive. And the UK is marking 5 years since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic with a nationwide day of reflection. Bereaved families are walking the National COVID Memorial Wall in London, casting flowers from Lambeth Bridge in memory of those lost. Events are taking place across the country, including a special service in Manchester, a commemoration in Sheffield and a concert in Belfast. And the UK has recorded the hottest day of the year so far, according to the Met Office, with parts of the country warmer than Spain and Italy. Crosby in Lancashire reached 19.7 degrees today, but the mild spell won't last. Temperatures drop from Tuesday, with wintry showers returning in the north. Some rural areas in Scotland could even see lows of -4 degrees as the cold snap sets in. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. What a week it's been in Westminster, not least within the Reform UK party itself. I'm going to be joined by the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, to discuss the allegations made about Rupert Lowe's behaviour and about how the party has dealt with the events in the last 48 hours. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, will be here. I'm going to be asking him about Labour's plans to reform the civil service. Is this Sir Keir Starmer's attempt at America's coveted Doge? I'll also be speaking to the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp as the Conservatives table an amendment to prevent the Human Rights Act interfering in policies to tackle immigration. People's Deputy of Ukraine, Alexei Goncharenko, will join me from Kyiv ahead of the Ukraine-US peace talks in Saudi Arabia tomorrow. As ever, we've got 90 minutes of punchy politics to come. Do not even think of going anywhere. Joining me now is the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden. Minister, lovely to see you this morning. Thank you very much for your time, as ever. You've committed yourself to cutting the cost of the civil service, which has an annual salary bill of £16.6 billion. The workforce consists of 500,000 full-time employees, which begs the question, how many civil servants are you going to cut?
I don't want to set out a figure like that, Camilla, because it's been done before and it hasn't worked. You might remember the Conservatives said they would cut the number of civil servants by 90,000, I believe it was, and then hiring went up. What I want to do is something different, which is to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck for the public, to make sure that where people want to see more people, for example, teachers in the classroom or police officers on our streets, that we get the resources there, but we also use both new technology and good performance management to get the good civil servants, which is the vast majority of the people I work with, to do their jobs better, and where it's not working out, where we can have a process where people leave. These are some of the reforms that we'll be setting out this week. It's really important that the state reforms itself while the private sector is changing. If we think of the way that we do business in the private sphere, we can't have the state left behind.
Okay.
That's in all our interests, and that's what I want to do.
All right, but surely you have to cut down the numbers here. We had 380,000 civil servants back in 2016. The country still ran okay. Services were still provided. So why can't you bring the numbers down considerably?
Well, I think we can bring the numbers down. And
Well,
those
by how
rises
many?
that you've read out, they happened under the Conservative government. And I sort of asked myself, you know, what were they, you know, what was the intention behind that? And when I ask what's the, you know, behind the rise in that number, two things are always quoted to me. People say Brexit and they say COVID. Now, I understand that after Brexit, there was probably some bureaucracy that used to be done in Europe that's now being done in the UK, and we needed more people for that. That'll be part of it. I also understand that we hired more people during COVID, but COVID was 5 years ago, and we're long past the pandemic now. So nobody from the previous regime has really been able to explain to me why they hired an extra 130,000 people. So I want to make sure that we get the best value for money for the taxpayer. The state has taken on some things it hasn't done before. There have been some changes in policy, for example, on the probation service, which has meant bringing some things back in-house. That will explain some of it. But what's really important is to get the best value for money for people, make sure these are good jobs that people want to do, and make sure that when we use public resources, it's where the public really want to see it. And that's why we fought the election saying, let's hire more teachers, let's hire more police officers, let's make sure that when taxpayers are paying in, they get a good outcome. That's what we want to see.
I know, but you can't afford to hire more frontline workers if you don't get rid of more civil servants. I don't understand why you can't even give us a rough idea of numbers. Government sources have talked about 10,000, but that would only be a drop in the ocean, wouldn't it?
Let me talk about my own department, for example. It's grown hugely in size since the last time I was in government. We started a voluntary exit programme before Christmas there. That will get rid of about 400 people. There may be other similar things in other departments too, but I don't think accrued headcount is the correct way to do it, because what you want is a civil service that's the right size for your policies, rather than just saying we've got to have X number of people.
Are too many civil servants working at home?
Well, I'm a bit old-fashioned on this, Camilla, I have to say, and I prefer people to be in the office because I think they learn from one another better, and you get that friendship and social capital, and I think you do your job better. But we're flexible about this. There are, of course, reasons why some people might want to work from home on some days, and that's built into the system. But if you ask me my own view, I quite like people being in the office.
OK, so you want to bring more civil servants back to the office. Can we confirm that, Mr McFadden?
Well, we've got a target. We stick to that. But I would say to anyone who's starting a new job, if they ask, will I learn more by being in the office? I would say yes, you will, and you'll develop better as a worker.
Sir Keir Starmer has indicated that Labour is going to block a legal ban on first cousins being able to marry in England and Wales. Why is that? Is the Prime Minister in favour of interbreeding?
Look, I'm not aware of him being so definite on that.
So you will block this?
You know, I think these issues arise. I don't, think we're going to adopt that position on this question.
Sorry, what position are you adopting on first cousins marrying? What position is Labour adopting on the issue of whether first cousins should marry in England and Wales? Should they or shouldn't they?
Well, I don't think we're planning a legal change on whatever the current position is on that at the moment. Not that I'm aware of.
So at the moment, it's not legally banned for first cousins to marry in England and Wales, despite the obvious health implications of interbreeding. Richard Holden is suggesting a legal ban on first cousins marrying, and at the moment it looks like Labour might block that. Why? Labour cannot possibly be in favour of first cousins marrying, can they?
Well, I'm not aware of our plans to change the current law at the moment on that question. If we are planning to change the law, and I promise I'll come back on your programme and talk to you about it. But as of today, I'm not aware that we're planning a legal change on that issue. OK,
but do you think first cousins should be able to marry in England and Wales? Well,
you know, as a minister, I'm not planning to change the law on that right now.
But Mr McFadden, what do you think? Should they be allowed
then
to?
I'll come back on.
But should they be allowed to? It's a simple yes or no question. I don't think first cousins should be able to marry in England and Wales. What do you think?
You're the first person ever to ask me the question.
OK, so answer it.
When the government's got a position of changing the law, I'll happily come back and talk to you about it.
But what do you think? Do you think first cousins should be able to marry in England and Wales?
Well, that's the current law as it stands, I think. We're not planning to change the law on that. As far as I know, if there's a change in that and the government decides to change the law, then I'll happily come back on and talk to you about it.
OK, so you don't seem to be willing to answer that question. Let's go on to David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. He's personally intervened to support this controversial new Chinese embassy in London because, quotes, it would be in Beijing's interests. Why on earth, in the current climate, is the Labour government making decisions that would be in Beijing's interests?
Look, we'll have to have a proper process on this application for a new Chinese embassy. That's not reached its conclusion yet.
But Lammy's supporting
in terms of relations with China.
Why?
But that's not the end of the story. There has to be a proper process in deciding whether or not the embassy should go ahead. But look, on relations with China, this is an important economic power in the world. We have to recognise that. There's a lot of British trade with China, so we want that trade to continue, but we're also alive to the security
carry out human rights abuses, don't they?
And we'll always
the Chinese
protect the people.
Why would you do anything that's in Beijing's interests?
That's the case. On human rights, we constantly raise these things when we meet Chinese officials and ministers, and it's possible to do that and to challenge on these things while also understanding that it is simply not possible for the UK to say, we'll never talk to China, we won't trade with China.
It's not about not talking to them, it's about allowing them to have a super embassy in Tower Hamlets.
Well, they've already got an embassy in the country. If they want a different one,
why do they need a new one then?
We'll take the decision in the normal way. We have an embassy in China too. The way that diplomatic relations work, you often have embassies in countries around the world where you might not approve of everything that that country does.
Okay.
That is a fact of modern diplomacy. You don't always get to treat with people who you agree with on everything. And it's in Britain's interests both to challenge China on the security grounds, but also to have an economic relationship with them. We cannot simply turn away and say, we're not talking to this group, we're not talking to that group. That's not a proper trade policy for the country.
All right, Pat McFadden, time has run away with us, I'm afraid. We need to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
What a shame. We could have covered more subjects.
We always enjoy it, don't we? All right, and more to come because the Deputy Leader of Reform, UK, Richard Tice, will be here in just a jiffy. Do not move a muscle.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One former Royal Marine has just set up a state-of-the-art new fitness brand which combines fitness, dating, clubbing. It's all in a very unique experience.
Yes, Will McLaren and co-founder Toby Spooner have managed to fuse well-being, dating and what they call community building in their new full-day event, Metrics, which also includes high-intensity workouts. Will and Toby are joining us now in the studio.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, gents. Thank you for joining us. I'm very interested in this because all I seem to see at the minute is high rocks. But from what I've read about Metrics, this seems like the new upgraded version. What can you tell us about it? Tell our viewers all about Metrics.
Well, it is a fitness competition, but we are combining the music and production element. Also, we want it to be quite a social event as well. So we want people to come, meet each other and have a great day out.
So what does that actually mean? Tell us a little bit more in detail. Toby, just tell us a little bit about what's involved.
So, in short, it's an immersive fitness competition.
Yeah.
So you can do a partner workout, you can bring a friend, or we can actually match-make people. So we're getting that dating element.
Well, it was Valentine's yesterday.
Precisely,
so
right.
is this going to be the new Tinder? People going along to Metrics and meeting their future partner?
Well, exactly that. So we've done a load of research into it, and what we've found is that exercise is slowly becoming more of a dating scene.
So is it, I assume, some behind the scenes of what Metrics will look like? Because it's still to start, isn't it? Is it March it begins?
Yeah, so the 1st and 2nd of March, so it's in 2 weeks, at a magazine in North Greenwich.
We've known each other for a fair while, but we kind of put our heads together. So we've worked in fitness for years, and we found that music really drives performance.
Yeah.
And people love music. People will come to our classes, they'll come away and they'll say, music was so good. And it just elevates the experience. We said, how can we put this on a scale, tenfold?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lots more still to come. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, will be here in the studio. I'll also be joined by Alexei Goncharenko, the People's Deputy of Ukraine, ahead of those crunch talks between the US and Ukraine in Saudi Arabia tomorrow. But first, I'm joined by Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Mr Philp, great to see you this morning. Thank you for your time. I would imagine that as Shadow Home Secretary, you're making inquiries about the whereabouts of Abu Wadi. This story appears on the front of the Mail on Sunday. I'm sure you're familiar with it. He was picked up by the UK Border Force on Thursday. He has previously called for the slaughter of all Jews. He's been photographed with AK-47s. He's a former member of Hamas. Do we think the Home Office knows where this guy is?
Well, I'll certainly be asking the Home Office that question. What the Home Office needs to do is identify where this despicable individual is and, frankly, remove him from the country back to Palestine immediately. He clearly has no place in the United Kingdom and potentially poses a threat to our fellow citizens. And this just illustrates why it is so important to get control of our borders and to stop these boat crossings. Unfortunately, since the general election, these boat crossings under Labour have gone up by about 28%. And these are the kind of people that Labour are now letting into the country.
Although, can we just have a frank admission? Because, to be fair to him, the former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, did say this week. No government can stop the boats, can they, Mr Philp? The Tories didn't manage it. Labour aren't managing it now.
Well, Labour have completely lost control, as I said, and the numbers have gone up.
Did the Tories ever have control?
The Rwanda deterrent had it. Yeah, well, I'm just about to say, so the crossing numbers did actually go down in 2023. We did start getting the numbers down. And if the Rwanda deterrent had started as planned, on the 24th of July last year, that was when the first flight was due to take off, then I think that deterrent would have worked. It stands to reason. If you're an illegal immigrant in France and you know if you cross the English Channel by dinghy to the UK, you are then going to get pretty much immediately removed somewhere else, be it Rwanda or elsewhere, then you're not going to bother crossing, are you? Now, we saw Australia about 10 years ago make a similar plan work. They called it Operation Sovereign Borders. We in government started returning Albanians back to Albania. They were the largest nationality crossing the Channel, and when we started returning them, it went down by 93%. So those examples go to show that if you rapidly remove people that arrive, then they don't attempt the crossing in the first place. And that is why it was such a catastrophic mistake by the Labour government to cancel the Rwanda deterrent before it even started.
It could have been a catastrophic mistake by the Conservatives not to have got a grip on this issue earlier. We now have Sunak saying that we should leave the ECHR unless it is reformed and that we can't afford net zero. Why didn't he say this while he was in office? Why didn't the Tories bring in the Rwanda plan years ago if that was the way to stop the boats?
Well, obviously, the Rwanda plan was repeatedly challenged in the courts, and we had to actually pass a special bill through Parliament about a year ago called the Safety of Rwanda Act, which, by the way, the Labour government are about to repeal, which I think is a really stupid thing to do, because it means that if Labour do ever come to their senses and change their mind and decide to restart or start the Rwanda scheme, as they should do, they will have destroyed the legislative, the legal basis to do so. So I can tell you now,
you could have done that, though. While the Tories were in office, while the Tories were in office, you could have repealed the Human Rights Act. This was a Tony Blair invention that has led to legal warfare against legitimate government policies by elected politicians. You could have done all this, and you didn't, and now we're in this mess.
So look, I mean, the case law coming out of the courts, including actually, or principally, in fact, UK courts, has got kind of worse and worse over the years. And it has, in my view, now got to the point where we do have to essentially disapply the Human Rights Act or repeal the Human Rights Act in relation to immigration matters. And that's an announcement Kemi and I are making this morning. And tomorrow, Monday, I will be tabling an amendment in Parliament to Labour's border bill, I call it the border surrender bill, to do exactly this. We're going to put it to a vote in committee firstly, and then on the floor of the whole House, and we'll see if Labour will support our proposal. I will be voting in favour of it.
Well, they're not going to,
because
are
we've
they?
had for too long now judges. Well, it's up there. We'll put them to the test. I'll be voting for it. I can tell you
You could
that.
have done this while you were in office with an 80-seat majority.
Look, Camilla,
you had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. And now you're retrospectively trying to repeal the Human Rights Act when it comes to immigration. It doesn't make any sense.
So, Camilla, these cases over the years have got worse and worse and worse. We've seen just in the last few weeks Charles Hymas at the Telegraph and Matt Dayton at the Times exposing some of these recent judgments. So it's a problem that's been getting worse even in the last few months, let alone even the last few years.
Okay.
But frankly, looking back, yes, I would have wanted to repeal it. But look, we've got new leadership. We've got a new leader of the Conservative Party. You've got a new Shadow Home Secretary, which is me, and we are now proposing decisive action in this area. I'm going to be tabling that amendment tomorrow, and I'm going to be voting for it in Parliament.
Let's be decisive. You can tell me then, you've committed to a strict cap on immigration. What is it?
Well, I'm not going to shoot from the hip. We're going to come up with a properly thought-out number in due course, long ahead of the next election.
What is the number? You have had a long time to think of the number. You were in power for 14 years. You've now been in opposition for 6 months.
Camilla, we're not gonna...
You must have a figure in your mind. What should immigration be capped at? We can all have a figure. I'm going to come up with one now and see whether this is feasible. 100,000.
Yeah, well, Camilla, I'm not going to shoot from the hip and just pluck a number out of thin air. I've been Shadow Home Secretary for just 3 or 4 months, so I'm not just going to shoot from the hip. We are going to think this through properly so it's credible. You know, we saw, Reform is a party that just shoots from the hip and doesn't think things through, as Rupert
Well, at least it's been clear
last week. I'm not going to do that.
At least Reform's been clear. It said net zero migration. It's really clear.
Camilla, I'm going to think this. But by the way, that still implies about 500,000 people coming in each year. By the way,
okay.
So look,
is that
I'm going to
too
think
many?
this through properly. I'm not going to shoot from the hip. What I will tell you is the number will be a lot lower than it has been recently, and a lot lower than recent forecasts.
I would have hoped so. It's recently been 900,000.
And let me finish. And we're going to put down another amendment in Parliament, creating the legal mechanism for MPs every year to vote on what the legal cap should be. And again, we'll see if Labour vote for that or not.
Now, why hasn't the whip been removed from Tory peer Lord Hamilton after he claimed that British Jews should pay for a Holocaust memorial because, quotes, they have an awful lot of money? The Conservatives themselves have said that his comments are completely unacceptable and, quotes, flagrantly anti-Semitic. Why is he still in the Lords then?
Well, that's obviously a matter for the House of Lords Chief Whip. That's for them to decide and to answer. But I do agree those comments, I think those comments are completely unacceptable. They're disgraceful. You know, the Holocaust was a terrible, terrible stain on global history. And actually all of us together should remember that and honour the victims and critically learn the lessons. That's a matter for the House of Lords Chief Whip, but his comments, what I'll tell you is that his comments are completely unacceptable. I've told you his comments are completely unacceptable, and well, I'm not the Lord's Chief Whip, so that's not for me to decide.
It's just an opinion.
Are, frankly, totally unacceptable.
OK. On reform...
That is my opinion. You asked me on my opinion, that's what it is.
Well, you haven't given me an opinion. You haven't said whether the whip should be removed or not. You've just delegated it to the person in charge of the Lords. But I'm just asking you as a Conservative, this is a fellow Conservative, it's flagrantly anti-Semitic, should he have the whip removed? Just asking for your opinion on it.
Well, OK, well, I'm saying that's somebody else's decision, but I think the comments are completely disgraceful. Right,
OK.
Reform.
Reform. Now, have you had any defections to the Tories? Have you had any members coming your way from Reform after this argument between Rupert Lowe and the rest of the party?
So I haven't seen the figures. What I do know is that we've won 5 times more by-elections in Reform since the election. And I also know that Rupert Lowe said last week what everyone else has been thinking, which is that Reform is essentially a protest party without properly thought-through ideas, led by, in Rupert Lowe's words, a Messianic leader. He said they're not a serious party.
Will you
and then what happened just a few hours later, just a few hours later,
in the Conservatives,
he got kind of stabbed in the back. Well, I don't think he's applied to join, but he's been clearly stabbed in the back by his own party, and there's only 5 of them in Parliament, and they're fighting like rats in a sack already, just demonstrating that they don't have the serious ideas to take the country forward.
That phrase was once used about the Conservatives, wasn't it, Mr. Phil? Fighting like rats in a sack.
Well, it was once used, Camilla. Yes, it was once used. But if you look at the last few months since Kemi Badenoch became leader, you will have seen a party that actually is united. Okay. The infighting has ended, and we are united as a party, and we're developing serious ideas.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
I think the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News. With me now in the studio is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice.
Good morning.
What a weekend you've had, Richard. OK, so let's get stuck into this. Did you release that statement about Rupert Lowe because he had fallen out with Nigel Farage and been critical about him in an interview with Andrew Pearce?
No, far from it. In fact, if anything, the opposite is true. Look, first of all, it's a great shame because... we've been doing so well, and Rupert's been doing some great work on particular issues that are of real importance to many people. Because unfortunately, there are serious allegations of bullying by two separate women that have been made to the parliamentary authorities,
which he denies.
That is a question of fact. And then quite appropriately, our chairman Zia Youssef, who's been working incredibly hard, he made the decision that actually the responsible thing to do was to launch an independent investigation by a KC, which was launched at the end of February.
Yes, but
hang on, you've asked me a question, let me answer. Right, the independent investigation, Rupert was told about that at the end of February, sometime before this interview appeared. So the timing might look coincidental, but it's actually the opposite, Camilla.
Richard, honestly, the timing doesn't just look coincidental, it looks a little bit malicious.
Well, I've just told you.
The allegations refer to something that happened in December. And you decided to come out with it. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. You come out with the statement on Thursday after Rupert Lowe has questioned whether Nigel Farage is fit to be Prime Minister. There was no need to have released the statement immediately after that interview. These allegations refer to something back in December. So, of course, the timing looks deeply suspicious. And it suggests you've mishandled it.
Far from it. We've done the appropriate and responsible thing to do. There was a further threat made to Zia literally last week. So at the end of the day...
What's the nature of these threats?
I'm not going to go into any details of that, but ultimately, as chairman, Zia's got significant responsibilities. Imagine if we'd done the opposite. Imagine if we'd brushed this all under the carpet.
Well, you could have conducted an internal investigation and then revealed the findings. Even the KC in this seems to think that you put this statement out too early.
The reality is that we have been working incredibly hard. We're going up in the polls. But the truth is, hang on, hear me out. The truth is that these difficulties have been ongoing for some time. We hoped that they could be dealt with. For example, just before Christmas, there was a very unfortunate incident that I witnessed in the House of Commons between Rupert and the Labour Minister,
which was resolved in the end.
Well, but there was almost an altercation, and that was, that was an indication
but
of...
the Speaker did draw a line under it, so
we did, but
that's not in this statement, is it? That incident doesn't feature in the statement.
That is, there have been numerous other areas where, unfortunately, it's turned out not to be possible to work constructively with Rupert. And let me just give you an example.
Hang on, let me ask one question, please, because you are speaking a lot and you're not letting me ask the questions that our audience demands answers to. And I think that's right, because you know that there are a lot of Reform supporters watching and listening to this. you say he hasn't cooperated with the investigation. He says he's been in communication with the KC. So has he cooperated or not?
Well, two sides might disagree. Let's
has
see.
He cooperated?
Quite properly, I'm not...
Has he spoken to the KC?
Quite properly, I'm not involved.
Has he spoken to the KC?
It sounds like it from what he says.
So why is the statement saying he hasn't cooperated?
I'm not involved with the day-to-day of things. What I know... Hang on. What I know is, for example, we're all working incredibly hard. We've got May elections on the 1st of May. And whilst we're doing this hard work, for example, Rupert's not even been to our head office, just down the road, no interest in the May elections. We need a united team that is going to drive forward. We're heading in the polls.
If you need a united team, why are you airing all of this dirty washing in public?
It's not very united.
We've now got this unedifying war of words
of course it's
between Rupert Lowe on X, Nigel Farage in the Sunday Telegraph. It looks amateurish. You're meant to be a professional party. Are you a party of grievance or governance?
We are a party with the right policies to save this country.
Right.
Things like mass immigration, on scrapping net stupidity.
There's only 5 of you, and you're fighting like rats in a sack. How on earth is Nigel Farage going to command hundreds of MPs, which is your aspiration for the next general election, if he can't keep 4 MPs in check?
Because the truth is, we're working incredibly hard. We're going to work the hardest over the next 4 years. We're going to have the best candidates and the best policies.
You're working hard.
Hang on. And that starts on May the 1st this year. Then it goes into the devolved nation elections next year. And we're going to prove it by results.
There's
That's
a
what we're
history
focused
here, though,
on.
isn't there? Because Rupert Lowe isn't the first person to complain about the one-man band nature of reform, Nigel Farage having a huge ego, this idea that he has got a kind of messiah complex. That's also affected you because you were the leader of reform, you get pushed aside, Nigel Farage comes back. You've got to be honest that bred resentment within the party. I know it has, because I've got good sources close to it.
Completely opposite. I was delighted and thrilled.
Opposite.
I'm the one who was thrilled and invited Nigel. I said, get stuck in, it's serious. I'd taken it from whatever, 0 or 1% to in the low teens. I knew that Nigel could drive it forwards. Without Nigel, none of us would have been elected. OK? And let's be clear. Let's look at where
you wouldn't
under
have been
Nigel's
elected without Nigel Farage.
Oh, I think it would have been. It would have been
Boston and Skegness.
I think it would have been really that much harder. Because
you are putting your seat's victory down to Nigel Farage,
the growth
even
that
though you were leader of the party.
Well, during the election campaign, the point is that Nigel helped drive the awareness and growth of the party.
Yes.
And that's fantastic. And look at where we've grown to.
Why does he keep on falling out with people? He's falling out with Rupert Lowe, he's fallen out with Ben Habib. This is a point that's made about your leadership. You're regarded to have been collaborative. You're regarded to have had meetings weekly when you were leader about policy, membership, fundraising and media appearances. Conversely, Nigel Farage doesn't have any meetings. You don't have a shadow cabinet. Nobody is an official spokesman for different policy roles. So he can't delegate, can he?
There's 5 of us. So actually, essentially, we deal with all these issues. I talk about a variety, but when there's only 5 of you and you've got lots of issues...
So why did you hold meetings and he doesn't?
Well, actually, we do have meetings. And
well, that's not what people are saying.
The thing is that, unfortunately, Rupert chose... not to go to head office, not to attend some of these meetings. The rest of us have been, we've been very involved. That's the reality. The focus now is on driving this growth forwards. That's what we're united about. That's what we're going to continue to do, and we're going to continue to succeed. And here's an example. Just yesterday, in my constituency, walking around, greeting people, not a single person mentioned it. Coming back on the train, not a single person. Do you know why? Because people want us to succeed. They want us to save this country. They want us to drive forward with the right policies that will make people better off.
People might be questioning whether you can save the country if you can't even save yourselves. This has been utterly unedifying for reform.
Of course, it's not Plan A. I've said it's sad. It's unfortunate, but much better to deal with things early doors than to brush it under the carpet and hope it goes away.
If Rupert Lowe is exonerated by the inquiry, will he be allowed back into the party?
Let's see what happens.
He claims he's innocent. If he's exonerated, will he be allowed back into reform?
You have to be able to work with people. You have to be a team player, OK?
And it's a simple question, and I know you're good at answering questions, Mr Tice. If he's exonerated, is he welcome back in reform?
Well, the whip has been withdrawn, and we want team players that will unite. I am actually. The whip has been withdrawn, and that should be the assumption. We're driving forwards. We're not holding back. We've got a job to do. We've got hundreds of seats to win in May. We're not going to be distracted by this noise. And do you know what? I don't think the British people will be either.
Can we talk about Nigel Farage's ego? Has he been drinking too much MAGA Kool-Aid? Is he too close to Donald Trump to be objective? Because his popularity rating has actually dropped, according to YouGov, by 9 points since he didn't back Zelensky and Ukraine. Now, you came into this studio last week and you very much said, I've always been backing Ukraine. I've spoken in the House a number of times about the horrific situation that President Zelensky has had to deal with over the course of the last 3 years. Nigel Farage has been comparatively silent on that issue, and it's cost reform, hasn't it?
I don't think so, because Georgia poll
You don't think so?
Well, there's a poll out yesterday, Camilla, showing that we've gone up one, and we're 7 points ahead of the Tory.
But he isn't in line with the consensus on Ukraine, is he? Two-thirds of British adults support President Zelensky over President Trump. That includes 66% of Reform voters. He can't claim to be the people's politician if he's against the consensus. And this could be because he's too close to Trump to be objective.
No, I think it's actually, I think it's the opposite. I think what we have stood rock solid with Ukraine. We have, as I said on the programme last week, been rock solid behind the challenges that President Zelensky...
Nigel Farage has been rock solid behind Ukraine.
We at Reform... The point is...
Why are you saying that? He hasn't been.
No, look, at the end of the day, Nigel, quite rightly, as have I, have said the ultimate objective has to be a lasting peace with strong, robust security guarantees.
He hasn't been rock solid behind Ukraine, and that's the problem.
I'm sorry, Camilla, that's completely wrong.
You're saying that Nigel Farage has been rock solid behind Ukraine.
We've always said...
What, when he was
Nigel
praising Putin as a great leader, when he was talking about the Russian bear being poked by the expansion of the European Union and NATO?
Patently not the case. Nigel and I have been rock solid that Putin is the aggressor, he is an evil dictator, and Ukraine has been illegally invaded, and we've got to do the best we can to get a lasting peace with strong security guarantees. That's the critical... All the noise around how you get there, we quite rightly said, the scenes in the White House was regrettable and unfortunate.
Regrettable, he called it a spat. He didn't make any criticism of the US president when he called President Zelensky a dictator.
Literally.
He didn't criticise him for that. Is he objective enough on Trump? Yes or no, Nigel Farage?
Here's the point. Do you know what, actually?
Is he?
Here's the point.
No, I'm asking a question.
Yeah, and I'm answering it. If world leaders like Trump, like Zelensky, are trying to get to a peace, then actually our job is not to criticise every nuance of every day of every discussion. Do you know what it's to do? It's to actually provide support. So that's why I've been suggesting, when you've got all the cards on the table, you have these negotiations behind closed doors, including the critical card, I think the important card, of the $300 billion of frozen assets, right, that is in Western banks that we need to use as part of that.
If Nigel Farage wants to be Prime Minister, admittedly, I mean, there could be wasted votes in this devotion to the Donald, because he won't be in office by the time we have the next general election. But people will expect him to be objective about the US president, not be a president's poodle.
And that's why he said that what went on in the White House was regrettable. But the thing is not to focus on that, is focus on the objective. Focus on the key target, which is an enduring peace, and Nigel has spoke at length about security guarantees.
Final question. What are the names of the two councillors who have defected to Reform in Glasgow, Mr Tyson?
John Gray and Ross Lambie.
And which councils did they belong to
Renfrewshire and South Lanarkshire. It was great. I was under a lot of pressure. There was a lot going on, including the Rupert situation. And sometimes you can't quite get it always right. And I apologise for that. I was caught out the cellar.
You have taken one for the team today in doing the broadcast round after a difficult morning, so I do genuinely appreciate your time, and thank you for answering all of my questions. Well, thank you very much to Richard. Coming up next, I'm going to be speaking to the People's Deputy of Ukraine, Alexei Goncharenko, ahead of those peace talks in Saudi Arabia tomorrow between the US and the Ukraine. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Low pressure still dominates western parts of the Mediterranean. Outbreaks of showers, heavy rain, some strong winds as well. Temperatures a little below average for the time of year. Through Monday, showers across the west, some longer spells of rain, Spain and Portugal there. Showers across into Italy, temperatures in the mid-teens. But the best of the dry weather across Greece, across into Turkey as well. Plenty of sunny spells here. And the outlook for is it to improve a little with temperatures rising too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening, welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, many of us have seen a fine and settled weekend, but there is a change. It's going to be turning colder with some outbreaks of rain for some of us on Monday. Take a look at the bigger picture. There's an area of low pressure towards the southwest, but a cold front across the north that will introduce the colder air. But back through the rest of this evening then, this band of rain across parts of Scotland will gradually sink its way southwards, turning wintry over the hills. Cloudier skies across much of England and Wales, but largely dry and frost-free for many of us as well, but turning colder across Orkney and Shetland to start Monday morning. So looking through into the detail then on Monday morning, then we have this band of rain across parts of Scotland, but also some har and some sea fret across the eastern coast. Behind this band of rain, actually it will be turning brighter with some showers. Bright skies across Northern Ireland as well, with some sunny spells developing to start the day. Similar picture across much of England and Wales, but generally a bit more cloud in places compared to recent days. So as we go through the rest of Monday morning then, this band of rain and cloud will gradually try to start sinking its way south and eastwards. Generally the rain will start fizzling out, and behind that turning much brighter across much of Scotland, with frequent showers moving in across eastern areas. Across the south, generally cloudier here with some outbreaks of rain, but we do hold on to the milder conditions, not quite as mild, but 13, 14, 15 degrees, but feeling much colder across northern parts of Scotland. And then as we go through Tuesday, actually all of us will start to see them colder conditions feeding through. Many places staying a mixture of sunny spells, but also some showers, especially across the eastern coast. And that sets the theme through Wednesday and Thursday. Sunny spells, scattered showers, but temperatures around average with the return of overnight frosts. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Joining me now is the People's Deputy of Ukraine, Alexei Goncharenko. Mr. Goncharenko, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Do we think that Russia has stepped up its attacks against Ukraine in light of that very difficult meeting at the Oval Office between President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance and President Zelensky?
I think Russia increased their attacks on Ukraine as a result not of the meeting itself, but of the consequences of this meeting, stopping American military aid to Ukraine and pause in sharing of intelligence data. Now Russia tries to exploit this time and this opportunity like they did a year ago when it was also paused in American military supply because of the debates in the Congress. Now they try to do something similar.
And what's the view in Ukraine, Mr. Goncharenko? Is it that President Zelensky mishandled this meeting?
I think you can ask many people and you will hear different answers. Many people support him and rallying around him. Some people, including me, I think he mishandled this meeting. And I think that leaders should deliver, first of all. And he came to the White House not to argue with the American president, but to cooperate and to find the ways to do this. And the end is catastrophic. We lost this support. Could it be another way if he would behave another way? I don't know, but maybe it would be a chance at least. But we have what we have. And unfortunately, I think this meeting strengthened those in entourage of President Trump, because there are different people there. There are very good people in Ukraine and interested in Europe, but there are other people. And unfortunately, this meeting last Friday, it encouraged those skeptics and pro-Putin people in his entourage.
Yes. And what are we to make of President Trump's people apparently meeting in secret with opposition MPs in Ukraine? Now, I know you are an opposition MP. I'm not sure if you've been involved in any talks with Trump's people, but we know a number of different opposition MPs in Ukraine have been.
Oh, it's more rumors. I mean, I am involved in talking with American congressmen, senators, former and acting officials. That's part of my job, being one of representatives of Ukraine in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, meeting and working with American colleagues. So I don't think that there are secret meetings about just kicking out Zelensky or something like this. We can't have elections today. I am not supporter of Zelensky, as you told, and that's true. But I can tell you, we can't have elections. So it's physically impossible. It's not. We don't have elections not because Zelensky tries to avoid them. We don't have elections because it's physically impossible in our security situation.
Even as an opposition MP, Mr. Goncharenko, what do you make of some of the claims? They're largely made on X. They're the kind of claims that are repeated by the likes of Elon Musk. Zelensky is in fact a dictator. He's a warmonger who's prolonging the war unnecessarily. He's forcibly conscripting troops to the front line. He's corrupt. What's your reaction to these claims that seem to be fueling this slightly anti-Ukraine, pro-Russian sentiment among some in the US?
That's very important. And I think not only in the US. First of all, I would like to address to all those people who are not big fans of President Zelensky. I mean, also, I'm not his fan, but Ukraine is not President Zelensky. Ukraine is tens of millions of people who are suffering and dying here every day. Ukraine is also the country which is fighting against awful tyranny, which tries to conquer Europe. Speaking about Russia and Putin. So please don't forget it and don't mess it. I think, by the way, it's one of the mistakes of Zelensky that he embodied in himself completely Ukrainian resilience. At the beginning, it was great because it was easy for understanding of people who maybe even didn't know what is Ukraine and where it is situated. But now it's bad because all questions to him are lying also on Ukraine too. Speaking about dictatorship, he's not dictator. He's democratically elected leader. Do we have problems with democracy in Ukraine? Yes, we do. It's understandable. 3 years of martial law time, you know. It's not the best time for democracy to flourish. But I think Zelensky could be more democratic. There is partly control by the government of the media. There is a lot of pressure on local governance. There is a lot of pressure on opposition. Zelensky is using also sanctioning opposition leaders, which is definitely not right to do. So we have some problems, but they're not so critical to call him dictator. It's very big exaggeration.
OK, and quick final question. Keir Starmer's coalition of the willing, is it enough?
It's great, but it's not enough. Without United States of America, it's not enough.
OK. Mr. Goncharenko, I need to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for joining me today.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, many of us have seen a fine and settled weekend, but there is a change. It's going to be turning colder with some outbreaks of rain for some of us on Monday. Take a look at the bigger picture. There's an area of low pressure towards the southwest, but a cold front across the north that will introduce the colder air. But back through the rest of this evening then, this band of rain across parts of Scotland will gradually sink its way southwards, turning wintry over the hills. Cloudier skies across much of England and Wales, but largely dry and frost-free for many of us as well, but turning colder across Orkney and Shetland to start Monday morning. So looking through into the detail then, on Monday morning then we have this band of rain across parts of Scotland, but also some har and some sea fret across the eastern coast. Behind this band of rain, actually it will be turning brighter with some showers. Bright skies across Northern Ireland as well, with some sunny spells developing to start the day. Similar picture across much of England and Wales, but generally a bit more cloud in places compared to recent days. So as we go through the rest of Monday morning then, this band of rain and cloud will gradually try to start sinking its way south and eastwards. Generally the rain will start fizzling out, and behind that turning much brighter across much of Scotland, with frequent showers moving in across eastern areas. Across the south, generally cloudier here with some outbreaks of rain, but we do hold on to the milder conditions, not quite as mild, but 13, 14, 15 degrees, but feeling much colder across northern parts of Scotland. And then as we go through Tuesday